Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am delighted to be joined today by Pipa Elms, who is a treasurer at the Ellesmere Rangers Ladies and coordinator at the Ellesmere Wildcats. Did I get that
Hello.
right?
You did. That is exactly what I am.
Yes. Yes, how are you this evening?
I'm very well, thank you.
Well, today we're going to be discussing about what more can be done to improve the women's game. So obviously, there has been more progress to be done. Progress has been made in the women's game, but there is still a lot more to bridge the gap between the men and the women in terms of viewership, in terms of finances, in terms of facilities. So, as someone that um, deals with finances at Ellesmere Rangers Ladies, how does that differ compared to the men's team?
Well, at the minute, or in recent times, if anything, the women's game has been, receiving much more funding than the men's game. The FA has been pushing the women's or the female football agenda significantly in the last few years to try and get more involvement from ladies and girls and, funding that appropriately. The Wildcat Centre I run is similar to other Wildcat centres that trains 5 to 11-year-old girls. The centre is part funded for 2 years by the FA. And all the training given to the volunteers that run the centres is given free of charge from the FA to the centres, and all the equipment required to run the centre is provided free by the FA. There really has been a push towards funding the ladies' game by the FA. Having said that, the reason there has been this push is because of all the damage the FA did to the female game up until 1971. If it hadn't been for them banning ladies from playing in FA-affiliated stadiums, which pretty much kills the women's game, and up until that ban was rescinded in 1971, then we wouldn't be needing this huge push now, because the women's game was, back in the 40s, bigger than the men's game.
Yeah,
so it's ironic.
So I'd say the women's game is probably I'd say financially it's probably like 40 years behind the men's, because even if you look at the FA Cup winners' money from last season, it was only 25,000 compared to the men's, which is 1.4 million. So
and it's madness.
Is a huge gap, which I think they're finally like, oh, we need to do better to bridge that gap.
Absolutely, but as I say, but it is just the irony that the FA was so aggrieved by the women's game being so popular in the 40s under the Ditka ladies era, when they brought the ban in from ladies matches being played at FA affiliated stadiums because they were too popular and they were getting crowds of up to 50,000. It is hilarious that the FA is now having to scrabble back, to try and to fund it now. The funding is there, but I think it's a cultural shift that's required as well now, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think because obviously, is it the Women's Euros coming up this summer? Yeah, and there was a Norwegian player came out because I think one of the games were getting played at the Manchester City, like women's where the women play, and she was like, "Well, that's a bit disrespectful because most of the other stadiums are all for like where they're using the men's stadium. Why are we using the ladies' stadium? We should be playing at the Etihad." And I like when
weird,
I saw
isn't
that,
it?
Pardon?
They've used Etihad for other ladies' games though, so I don't understand because what did they use the Etihad? Oh well, I've been to see ladies play at the Etihad, so they have used it for other women's games. So whether it was a policing issue or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I just like when I saw that comment, I thought, oh, that's sort of undoing the work that they're trying to do to sort of make the men and the women equal. I'm like seeing that, I thought, oh well, that you're sort of going back on like the whole objective.
It's hard to know though, isn't it? Because I can never know what the reason behind these things is. If the reason behind that is because actually there's going to be a general smaller crowd, and they need to be in a smaller stadium to get the atmosphere, that it sort of makes sense. Because I guess it's a bit like when the Champions League final was in Cardiff. Obviously, the women's final was played at Cardiff City Stadium, was it?
Yeah.
And the men's was played at the Millennium. But I assume, as I say, that might be a crowd-related thing, that to get the atmosphere required, you have to, because there's fewer people, you have to put into a smaller environment.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, neither do I. But I think they're trying to, especially with the broadcasting deals that are coming. I think in 2021, WSL signed like a record-breaking deal, 24 million across 3 years. And along with the extra money, it came with the extra coverage, at least up to 30.
Yeah.
Well, at least 35 up to 44 games a season across Sky, BBC. I think they did some on BT Sport as well. So I do feel like that they are trying to rapidly catch up, because it is getting more popular, especially after the Women's World Cup, when England did very, very well. That sort of brought in more people and more young women to go, yeah, I'll give this a go. Especially after all the stigma around it and all the issues that young women find joining the game. And I do feel like that it is close. I do feel like that more is being done, but I do feel like that more needs to be done to help women that do suffer abuse, either outside of the club or even within the club. Because we've seen issues with the men's game about decades ago about abuse. And if it can happen to the men, you're betting your bottom dollar it's probably happened to someone, and that probably won't come out for another 10, 20 years, maybe 30 years.
I know, and I do think that's a big problem, in that, it's not just about getting the females to be playing, it's about getting more females to be in coaching roles, so that there is less of that concern about, abuse and things.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are about, but I know with the men, they had a documentary about a Chelsea coach. There was one about City as well that came out. But I do feel like that the fact that they're sorting it out now, it's sort of like could have been sorted out back then. We could have found a solution then, but I think now with social media, the money in the game, I just feel like it's getting sorted out now, because people are more comfortable to say, yes, this happened to me back when I was 16 in the academy. And
the thing is, it's not just football, is it? And that's the thing that we have to remember, is that every sport seems to be shot through with that.
Yeah,
it's swimming and all the other sports, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's coming out more in just all the different sports, male, female, about the darker side of the game. And I guess that's what is what the FA is trying to do with like pumping all the money, all the facilities. Is it's trying to say, look, we've changed, please come back to play our sport. Obviously with the women's game, I think like more teams are being made now for the women. I think since the Women's World Cup, over 605 new girls youth teams and over 260 new women's clubs were registered to play. But grassroots teams are still finding it difficult with getting money. I think money's the big issue. Like, you're seeing all the breaking deals up top, but you're never seeing where it filters down into the non-league and grassroots. I think men had the same problem when COVID happened. It's like, all right, COVID's done. Well, COVID's here. Then what are you going to do to help us stay afloat? And all the big clubs are going, what we're supposed to help you? Yeah, not for us. So I guess that's still a problem as well.
That's what we're really lucky at Ellesmere Rangers, is that actually our men's team very much, sort of effectively subsidises a lot of what our ladies team can do, in terms of we don't pay anything for our facilities. All we do is pay our share of the insurance, so we don't pay anything for facilities. We don't pay anything for use of our minibus. We don't pay anything for, for the, for food after the matches or any of that, which is great. And without our men's team, we wouldn't have that. And actually, it does mean that our ladies effectively sort of treated equally in that respect, which is nice. But not every area is lucky enough necessarily to have a men's club that's able to do that.
I do feel like that. That I feel like it's happening more. Like a men's local club will have a ladies team, but it wasn't the same. I think it's the same with the big clubs, especially like the big Premier League clubs. Like they sort of disregarded their women's team. I think Liverpool sort of like didn't really bother with the women's team, but obviously it's changing with Chelsea, City, United. I think even West Ham. Like they're putting more money into their women's teams, and that's yielding results on and off the pitch, because now you're getting the big prize money, but the prize money and the viewership is still like so small, because when you look at the viewing figures peak at last year's FA Cup final, it was 1.3 million, and that's just like 14% of what the men's final did, which was 9.1. So what do you think needs to be done to sort of raise awareness of the women's game to try and catch up with the men's game?
Well, this is where I think it is a cultural thing, because you can't just throw money at the problem, because certain sections of society will see it's contrived and will then actually start to resent the women's game. If they don't think they're deserving of it because they're not, bringing in the sponsorship, or they're not, it's not getting the viewing figures, it's going to do more damage to throw money at it than potentially the good it will do, because it will make, as I say, certain sections of society turn their nose up and go, oh, well, they're just getting it just because.
Yeah.
Whereas we need to sort of show the popularity of the game first off, and how good it is, and get the viewing figures, and get so that the sponsors then want to come in and get on board to sort of to get the money in. But it's that chicken and egg thing, isn't it? Without the money, we can't afford to actually grow the game, but without growing the game, we can't afford to get the support. And that's where I think it's the role of the big clubs and the FA to push the big clubs to actually do their bit to support women's teams, and and involvement of women in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, talking about the Women's World Cup, like back in 2019, I think the FA released figures that more than 2.6 million women aged 16 and over now playing football in England due to the World Cup. So I do feel like it's gonna, and I felt with that tournament, because personally I don't watch much women's football, but I watched that World Cup. Like, I watched it for the first time. I went out my way to watch the World Cup for the women, and that was a big change for me. And I'm probably going to go out of my way to watch the Women's Euros in the summer. So it is slow, but I think it will change, because the more viewing figures, the more money. I think it's still, I don't know what the highest amount a woman earns playing football. I don't know what, because obviously now with the men's game, you pretty much know how much every player's getting a week. So I don't know how much the highest paid player gets a week, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a fraction of what even a youth team player gets at the moment.
Although equally, the men are just paid too much, aren't they? I mean, they don't need to be paid. That's gone crazy, and this is where it'd be nice if actually it was the men's game that was pared back rather than the women's game catching it up with them, because it's obscene.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, like the men's game needs to be pulled back, but this what happens. You push them. Like, they've created such a beast that they can't control it, and I guess the governing bodies say that we're here to protect it, are the ones that are making it worse. With the more games, the more tournaments, the money this, the money that, and I'm pretty sure, give it another 30 years, I'm pretty sure the women's game is going to be at that level where you'll get women's fans going, why on earth are they creating a new tournament this summer? Like, just let them relax. You don't need to bleed them dry of money. You do that already. So I just feel like that even though I feel like you're getting the best out, not the best out of the women's game. I feel like at this moment, like you're getting the women's game it's not getting overloaded with too much at the moment. Obviously, more can be done to make it bigger, but you're not getting tournaments every summer. It's still sensible. You're not getting meaningless international tournaments such as the Nations League in the women's. I know the women's has got is it the Sheba Leaf Cup?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's meaningful. Like that's like a meaningful tournament, not the tin pot one that has been created just to make more money. So obviously the FA released a 8-point strategy that they wanted to achieve by 2024. I've got them up on here. It says early participation, so every primary school age girl to have equal access to football in school and in clubs. Development participation, to have every girl to have equal access to participate for fun, for competition and for excellence. Club pathway, collaborate with clubs to develop an effective, high performance and inclusive player centred pathway. Elite domestic league and competition to create the best professional women's sport league and competition in the world. England to win a major tournament. Football for all, recruit and support a motivated and diverse range of local leaders organising their communities. Coaching, support the development of exceptional coaches at every level of the game and who they are representative of our society. And refereeing, ensure that every female referee afforded high quality bespoke learning development opportunities from grassroots throughout the elite game. Have you seen any of those plans come into place at Ellesmere?
Definitely the first one in relation to school age children having access to football. But the problem with it is when the Wildcats scheme that the especially Shropshire FA were really keen to push, they were pushing it in 2019, so pre-pandemic, and that's when we registered to run our Wildcat Centre at Ellesmere Rangers. And as I say, all the support was there, all the training, all the funding that was required. But unfortunately, although there is still some support there, a lot of the FA staff, especially at Shropshire FA, were let go, made redundant following the pandemic or during the pandemic. And so we've seen a massive change in how effective and communicative and supportive our local FA is since the pandemic. Having said that, we've still got a Wildcat Centre, we've still got the funding and we've still got the resources at our fingertips. But what it's taken is a lot of personal effort to actually keep driving it forwards. And that's one of the biggest problems in the game, is actually just getting enough volunteers in to run these things and make them work effectively and to facilitate all these clubs. And without a lot of effort on behalf of some very few people, these things wouldn't happen. And I find it exhausting. I'll be honest, I don't like running a Wildcat Centre. I find that 1 hour of my week an absolute chore. I need to lie down in a dark room afterwards. But I do it because I feel we should have one. And we do have to give the opportunity for these girls to get football somewhere every week. But equally, it shouldn't be like that. What's really annoying is we have boys teams at Ellesmere Rangers from sort of 5 years up, all the way through to 18, but there isn't capacity within them for the girls to join because they're oversubscribed by boys.
Yeah.
So any girls wanting to play more football can't break in, and I haven't physically got the time to run a Wildcat Centre and age-appropriate teams for all those girls.
Yeah.
And we haven't just got enough girls. We haven't got enough girls to do it. We really would be better off if we could join the boys, but there's just no capacity to do so.
So what would be the plan for the rest of the year to try and increase that participation? Would it be to go into schools or to go into
Yeah,
colleges?
schools is a great one, and we're really lucky in Ellesmere in that the PE teacher at our local primary school happens to be a level 3 coach. I mean, but how many primary schools have that?
Yeah.
I imagine that is very rare, and that's where the FA really needs to be getting them. You know, they could be funding PE teachers to do their coaching, so football specific coaching, specifically aimed at girls, and that would be the best way to get them. And actually, it would then take the burden off, potentially off volunteers like myself, but also if the girls are playing in the schools with boys, the boys may be more receptive to them coming along to their training and joining their teams, which then may mean that actually the parents rethink how they run those teams and they do let some of the girls join in. I think the segregation at at 5 years old up to 11 is unnecessary, and if anything, we need to be working out a way to make everybody equal.
Yeah.
On that, because then in 2 generations' time, we'll have taken away a lot of that stigma that we see at the minute.
Yeah. Before we go, one last question. What's the biggest thing that needs to be done to improve the women's game?
Oh God, the biggest thing.
Or the one that would make the most impact straight away?
I actually think we need to be getting, big name men's footballers coming out somehow in support of it, and not in like a token gesture, but somehow them coming out and pushing the women's agenda, using the influence they've got to push that women's agenda. Because at the minute, I'm a cynic about the women's game, and I play women's football, but I'm still more likely to sit down and watch a men's football match than a women's. And I'm still more likely to know who the men are, or listen to what the men are saying. And it's sad, but it is the reality. But we need them to start sort of talking to the people that are looking at them, up to them, to really take the issue to the fore. Because actually, everybody's cynical about the FA, so we're not necessarily listening to the FA when they say it should be at the forefront. We want to listen to the people that we look up to and that we respect, who are playing the game.
Pippa, thank you very much for joining.
Pleasure. Right, nice to see you.